You guys see this PowerPoint slide now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so basically, so just a little intro about myself. I've been a member of AK Psi since 2015 until I graduated. And then throughout my college journey, I've had 4 internships in college, Mala, Cardinal Health, Cisco, and Microsoft. And then after college, between graduation, the pandemic, and my first full-time job, I had another internship with Deloitte. So in total, I've had 5. And then currently, I'm working at Rock Central, which, if you don't know, Quicken Loans, they basically went public and then they had a restructure. And then now Rock Central is like their parent company. So throughout those internships, I've done pretty much all sorts of finance mixed in with a little bit of product and then program management at Deloitte. And then currently at Rock Central, I'm in people finance. So today, the whole point of this hour is to really show you and dive deep into like what it takes to land an internship and how your mindset and the process and the specific sort of actions I'm recommending everyone takes to get to those internships. You're not going to start out at, let's say, and some people do, but generally speaking, you're not going to start out at like a Fortune 500 company at your first one. But with these steps, you can start out at a smaller company and then work your way up to a bigger company or even your dream company before you graduate and hopefully land a full-time job offer with them. So the agenda for today is we're going to go over the introduction, the overview of how you should approach recruiting, the resume and the cover letter, and then LinkedIn, networking, and then the interview process. So jumping right into the introduction. So internships are extremely important for all careers, in my opinion, but especially business folks. I'm assuming most of you who are joining this are business folks, but also this applies to all students, engineering, people who are in liberal arts majors as well. Internships matter because of you get a head start on your experience before you are working full-time. And not only does that experience help you in the full-time corporate world, but it also gives you very, very good tangible stories and experiences to tell during those interviews when you're interviewing for full-time. So it helps literally from step 1 all the way to the last step of the entire recruiting process. So hopefully by the end of this, you're going to gain some knowledge about how this stuff works, and it enhances your own competitive profile and how competitive you are in the job market when you start looking for full-time jobs. So the overview of the process in your entire goal is to literally present your best self throughout this whole process. Your best, essentially your most valuable, driven, and a really, really strong or perfect fit of your professional self. So it's broken up into essentially 2 phases, and I call this like pre-interview and then the interview itself. And then obviously, if you pass both of those, you're going to be offered an internship or a full-time job. So there's 3 different phases in the first step. So the application is essentially your online process, and how you're going to want to tackle that strategy is to write an effective resume and cover letter. And cover letter, I would say, is with an asterisk. Some places require it, some places don't. So depending on what industry you're going for, the cover letter really can matter or it cannot. And then with the impact of that is to make sure that you have a really strong application for all online presence and processes. This is literally step 1 because no matter where you go, no matter what you're applying for, you need a strong resume. The second part of this is your offline presence. So your networking, which essentially is, talking to people in person to build those relationships, whether it's at events, career fairs, coffee chats, alumni, wherever it may be, networking with the employees of your dream company or wherever you want to work at, or just anybody in general to give you advice and pass on a referral on your behalf. Those are all extremely important because it implicitly encourages those referrals on your behalf, which I'll talk about later. And then finally, after that, you're able to land an interview, which it prepares you for that job offer. And so this strategy is then to really prepare for the respective types of different interview questions that may come your way. And then that overall impact, then obviously, once you pass that, is to land the job offer in the internship. So first, we're going to jump into the resume. And I want you guys to think about essentially your social media profile, right? Let's say Instagram, let's say building your Instagram. So a lot of people describe Instagram as a highlight reel of your life, right? And I want you guys to take that same mindset and apply it to your resume. Because essentially your resume is one page. It's very valuable real estate because you're gonna have only that one page to essentially present your best self. It's not about some stuff that's you've done. It's literally about your highest scores, your highest accomplishments, your highest impact value add that you've had in your different experiences. So you have literally this one page to convey that to the recruiter or whoever is reading a resume in, let's say, less than 30 seconds, sometimes even less than 10 seconds, right? And so you want to make sure you're nailing everything in that one page and telling them like your best story and your best self. So the writing process is essentially broken down to 3 steps, which is organization, your bullet points and your content structure, and then the additional sections which aren't covered in the first 2. So generally speaking, most resumes have 4 main sections. The first is education, the second is professional experience, the third is leadership experience, and the fourth is additional, which can include a lot of different things, but my favorite are your software skills, your passions about what you do outside of your professional work or school, and then if you speak another language, put your fluency in your languages down as well. And then the second part is to make sure your bullets and your content are extremely strong. So the structure to follow here is ACR, which is action, context, and results. And action is using a strong action word to show transferable skills. The context is to specify
how should I cut the turkey?
The significance, constraints, and the scope of what you've done. And then the last part for the results is to demonstrate that qualitative and or quantitative impact. And then the last one is in those additional sections is prior to your first internship, you want to include different sections that obviously demonstrate and market your value. But if you don't have the professional or the leadership experience, you can include things such as relevant classes, academic projects, or volunteer experience to demonstrate your value. And then on the right here, we have some important tips, which is to quantify results as much as possible. So you want to add in, for example, if you're saying that you sold a certain amount of things as someone, let's say, who works at a car dealership, you don't want to just say, I did this and this. You want to say how much you sold on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, to really show that dollar impact. And then, like I was saying before, you want to prioritize your best achievements and showcase them. So let's say in a 6-month experience, you've done a lot, right? And I see a lot of students putting everything, kind of like a biography. You don't want to do that because the stuff that, let's say, isn't as strong, it kind of takes away from the stuff that is much stronger to showcase yourself, right? So you only want to showcase the stronger things on your resume. Kind of like I was saying how it's really marketing your best self, like an Instagram profile. The third thing is conveying your high value. through transferable skills and work ethics. So a lot of the times, if you're building these different experiences up for like a dream company or a dream role that you want to work at, you really want to convey and write those bullet contents and use specific vocabulary that conveys those transferable skill sets. For example, I'm in finance, and a huge component of finance that's a very transferable skill is communication and good analytical skills. And so throughout my resume, I use a lot of those words such as collaboration or led or drove or analyzed, or those kind of words to really convey that the analysis and the leadership and soft skills that you have now and are using, you can carry on forward into the next role. And then the last thing is to obviously keep your formatting clean and really limit 5 bullets per section. So before I jump into the cover letter, I'm going to pull up a PDF of what I'm talking about. So okay, can everyone see this PDF?
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's a little small, but I made it 75% so that it could fit on one screen without scrolling too much. So this is one of my previous resumes that I've used to apply to a lot of companies. And right here we have education, professional experience, leadership experience, and additional. You'll see that there's a good amount of white space in between here so that it's very organized, it's easy to read. There's company, location, the role, and then the date. And then it's organized in the big structures, which is like 3 bullet points, 3, 3, without putting in too much so that the reader can easily scan through this. And then when I was talking specifically about the bullet content, how you want to structure that. So for example, we have company 2 and then these bullets. So the first bullet, advised, would be the action word. Executive team on 3 billion employee benefits model to reduce operational expenses. That would be the context describing exactly what I did in that project and how the context of a problem and how it was approached or thought about. And then how I personally approached it or what I added value to or impacted the team afterward is the result after this comma. So recommending expense planning process improvements that resulted in $30 million plus of savings for the company. So this is a structure that you should follow when you're writing your bullets. And a lot of people usually only include 1 or 2 out of the 3. And you want to make sure you include all 3 for all of your bullet points so that all your bullet points are strong and there's not like a weaker bullet when someone is reading through your resume. We can go through one more example on the bottom here of the same company. So benchmark SEC filing with Fortune 500 companies to improve readability. So this would be the context, benchmarked is the action word, and then the result would be contributing to graphic format and vocabulary simplifications applied in FY19. So going back to PowerPoint. So the cover letter essentially is an asterisk. Some people, depending on the industry or the company, you may need a cover letter, others you may not. I will show you an example of what I used in the past and still use to this day. But it essentially, what you want to do with the organization and this process is you really want to apply and write about the purpose of your application and why you're really passionate about this company. And so in the past, I've written very few cover letters. I've only written cover letters for companies that I absolutely needed to get past the application process, or companies that I'm extremely passionate about and really, really want to get into. And I was praying that the cover letter would set me apart from somebody that may have not submitted one. And so you really want to demonstrate your passion in the cover letter. And that can be through a multitude of ways. You may write like an interesting hook. You may write about your favorite product that you use all the time in your daily life. There's a lot of different ways, but those are just two examples that I've used in the past. And then you want to talk about your relevant experiences and skills that are not specifically, or they are covered in your resume, but you want to expand on them. And I'll show you guys that in the example. And then obviously at the end, you do want to restate your interest and also request for the interview. STAR structure, I'm sure you guys have heard of this. So situation, task, action, and results. So that normally is something that people suggest you follow during an interview. And essentially, when you write out your examples in the cover letter, the different examples and scenarios that you give, you're going to be writing them out in a sort of interview manner. But this is essentially for the cover letter portion where you're diving a little bit more specific into your relevant experiences and the different skills that you can bring to the team. So this is not something that's spoken about. This is something that is taken from that interview response that you may give, but in a written out manner. And the important tips are very similar to the resume, with the exception of obviously really showcasing your enthusiasm and passion, and obviously making sure that if you haven't, or if you have taken BA 330, obviously know that you need to be thorough and concise. But I can pull up an example right now. So what I use and what I still have used is something similar to this format where you have name, address, date, dear hiring manager. And I have a lot of place fillers in the first paragraph and then the later paragraphs, so that if I ever use this for, let's say, a multiple companies, I can apply the same thing. I wouldn't recommend this if you're applying to different companies completely or different industries, but since I was generally applying to companies that were all in one industry, it was pretty easy for me to just use those filler words. But don't do this if you're applying to different industries or like very, very different companies. So the first paragraph basically tells that what the purpose of this cover letter is. I give them what I'm doing and then why I believe I'm a strong fit and how I can bring value. So for value 1, value 2, and value 3, I take those specifically from the company website. I make sure that my examples that I've written can specifically mold to a value that company has. And for example, this value 3, probably would come from the value of, let's say, communication. And then value 1 would probably be something along the lines of like analytical skills, if the company really values analytical skills in their culture. Right. So these different values, you can write these examples before you apply, and then just go into the company, be like, okay, I'm a good fit. Okay, cool. What are the company values that I can really resonate with and relate to? And then just slot those in when you write your cover letter. And make sure to bullet these out. So these bullets are to make sure that there's enough white space for the recruiter or whoever's reading this to not just consume these huge paragraphs, that there's appropriate white space in between the paragraphs so that their eyes have a break. And then at this, so usually what I do is to make sure I network with someone if I'm going to submit a cover letter, and this kind of showcases my passion. And then these are the last two are just sort of generic sentences where I talk about how I believe I would be a good fit in the industry that I'm applying to. So moving on to LinkedIn. So a lot of people that I have met that are younger have no idea what a LinkedIn is and have never made one. So the first thing I would suggest everyone do at the end of this call, if you've never made a LinkedIn, go make one. And if you have one, hopefully you're able to take some of these tips and update your LinkedIn appropriately. So in terms of LinkedIn, they'll give you a rating. Like whenever you log into your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn itself will give you a rating, and the highest rating is All-Star. And you want to make sure you hit the All-Star profile by hitting these points, because when you're an All-Star profile, whenever a recruiter looks up LinkedIn profiles or just looks up people in general to reach out for, and you want to be reached out to by, like, let's say any recruiter, then the only profiles that will show up to them are generally All-Star profiles. The profiles that are lower, that are unfinished, that are not complete, they won't show up for recruiters. So the first thing is a photo should be professional, high quality, obviously taken with a background that complements your attire. The headline and summary. So you want to be clear and concise and strong with your headline because it follows you everywhere. A lot of people generally put wherever they're currently working at, such as financial analyst at Quicken Loans, or if you want to put, if you're a student, you can say, BBA or finance student at UM Dearborn, and that's okay as well. And then summary should portray career story or highlight accomplishments. So a lot of people don't fill out the summary and just leave it blank. I would actually advise people to actually fill this out. It doesn't have to be super long. Mine's only like 3 paragraphs, but it tells a good story of who you are as a person and what you're aspiring for, right? And so I have a PDF from an article that I just looked up on Google. And basically, it just tells you the different formats of LinkedIn summaries that you can use. I'm not going to go super in depth in these, but there's the mission-based summary. So it's basically saying that who you are, what you're striving for, and what your specialties are, which is essentially what you're good at. So this is a very brief, to the point, professionally what you're going to go for. There's a second option, which is the personality one, which is something that I use. I like to be a little bit more human on LinkedIn, and I like to talk to professionals by essentially talking about who I am as a person, along with my professional self of what I'm looking for, because I feel like it connects you or anyone between two people better that way. And I think people remember you not by who you are professionally, but by who you are as a person. So this is just for me, but feel free to add some personality in your summary if this is what you think will help as well. The third thing is a brief, which is very similar to the mission-based, but it's literally just one paragraph of what you've done, or one paragraph of like your overall experience, one paragraph of what you've done, and then like your skills. The blended basically takes the personality summary and then the mission and or the brief summary and combines it together. And personally, 4 is what I use. I have a paragraph for what I've done. I have a paragraph for the professional things that I'm really interested and passionate about. And then I have a paragraph for what are my personal interests and what I like to do outside of work. And then the accomplishments is basically just kind of like a resume, but in a very short version, just like listing all your accomplishments right from the get-go, so they know what you've done. So you can take any of these summaries, but I would recommend just to have at least something so that when someone looks at your LinkedIn, they know who you are and what you're looking for, right? Like they're not going to try to guess like, oh, are you an engineering student? Are you a political science student? They know exactly who you are. They know exactly what you're looking for. And it saves people time because people are very busy in the professional world. And it saves people time when they're trying to be like, okay, I know this person was interested in about finance, but I looked at his LinkedIn and there's like nothing on here to tell me that he's interested in finance. And it saves them time if they want to like refer you to different people, a recruiter, or put you in the right direction. So in terms of branding yourself, you want to, like I was saying, the all-star profile, but also be personal and use first person when you're reaching out to people. And then this is something I'll touch later on in the networking slides. And then customize your profile URL. So it's very important to customize your profile URL because it's kind of like Instagram. If you're not customizing it, it has a bunch of letters and numbers in it, and it's very difficult for someone to find you. But if you do customize it, you can put it in your resume. Like I put it in my resume at the top header, and it's very easy for someone to come find you and essentially look at your profile when you need to show them like what you've done. And then there's other ways to brand yourself, which is essentially just using LinkedIn as a social media platform. So you can engage your audience by posting, joining groups, asking for recommendations and endorsements and things of that nature. But all of that is essentially leading to networking, because what you really want to do ultimately at the end of the day is to use LinkedIn as a networking platform. It can be a job application platform, and that is newer. But the main goal of LinkedIn is to use it as a networking platform to lead you to those jobs, because essentially there's 4 different application levels. So generally speaking, everyone applies through the job application funnel, where they just see a job application, fill it out, and then submit it, right? So I would say that's like the widest tier. And then if you go up a step, is then you're applying with like a referral. So someone inside the company has then referred you at this point. And then after that, above that is the hiring team member. So someone on the hiring team who is either a recruiter, most likely a recruiter, is then passing your resume forward to the hiring manager. And then the top is the hiring manager referral, which is probably the hardest to get. But the whole goal of LinkedIn is to sort of not be in the bottom pool where you're just throwing your application in. You want to be in those upper 1 to 3 pools so that the chances of your resume being reviewed by someone who is rooting for you and caring enough about you to push you forward in those instances. So the whole goal of networking then, following LinkedIn, is to really build those long-term relationships that implicitly encourages referrals on your behalf, right? And so it comes with a lot of benefits. An insider champion for every company you're interested in. So someone that knows you well, knows your work ethic, someone that is willing to refer you at the different companies you're interested in. Someone to, when you have those conversations, to gain direction and help you focus on the future of your career. If you don't know what to do, if you know a bit about what you're doing, they're really able to give you insights on the career and then also inside the company. So you gain a deeper understanding of the role that you're applying for, the culture of the company, and then the interview process at the company itself, right? And then once you've built the selection of people up around and your network begins to expand, then you gain several experienced perspectives from a multitude of mentors or those people that you've networked with to really help push you in the right direction on what you want to focus on. So at the end of the day, ultimately, networking is building those professional, organic, and inorganic relationships The biggest issues that I see from people when I talk about networking with them is that you shouldn't focus on transaction-driven networking. You want to focus on the long-term and curiosity-driven, which means you're being engaged, asking those questions in those interviews or those coffee chats. It shouldn't be a transaction where it's like, I do this for you, you do this for me kind of thing. It should be a long-term kind of vision for you. So the second thing is fear of reaching out. A lot of people are afraid to cold email someone or just message someone straight out of blue on LinkedIn. It's actually very common, and it's not something that a lot of people do enough, unfortunately. So this is something that people hopefully, you get over this fear of just thinking that, oh, like they're not going to respond. Throughout my experiences, a lot of people don't respond, but that shouldn't really deter you because you really only need like one company. Let's say every internship or every summer, you really only need one company to say yes. So if you think about it from like a more optimistic mindset that like, okay, even if a few people along the way don't respond to me, that's okay. I can still use this process and meet with people that are very helpful to me, that I can build relationships with to ultimately just land that one internship that will keep allowing me to progress in my career. And then a lot of the times networking does not give like tangible benefits in the short term per se. So a lot of people just sort of be like, I'm not going to do this. But it really is like a compounding effect. I remember in 2017, I think I talked to one person almost every single week that entire year. So over the course of that 1 year, I had met like at least 50 people. And it's a compounding effect because now those 50 people then know more people, and those people know more people. So eventually, you're going to find someone that is hopefully able to guide you into the right direction of where you want to go in terms of where you want to work, or find you someone that has similar experiences with you and you can learn from them, right? It's not about those transactions or the short-term benefits. It's really about building those long-term relationships. And then in terms of when to network, the best time to network is not during the recruiting season. The best time to network actually is to reach out to people during the non-recruiting seasons, because they then have more time to get on the phone and chat with you about their experiences. Because during the recruiting season, there's probably like a million college students just like you who are reaching out, asking for phone calls and stuff. And they're very busy people, right? So if they're getting like 30 phone calls for like a week, they're less likely to add you to like their list of already long people that they need to talk to. So the best time is during the summer and the winter months, where recruiting is slowing after the heavy fall season. And so use that time to really set some goals for yourself, or set some people to reach out to, and use that time to really go for recruiting. Right now, I'm going to hop and show you what I mean by the different applications and the different networking that I've done in the past. So when I say applications, I had a conversation with Ryan Mady, and he tells me that he started on Indeed looking for roles. And people can go through it in many ways. My roommate actually, he's a grad student at COB, and he's an e-commerce analyst, and he also uses LinkedIn really for its job functions. Like he'll browse LinkedIn maybe like twice a week on the weekends and just go through being like, okay, is this something I'm interested in? That process can also work. Something I've done, it's I think on the other opposite end of the spectrum, which is where I did my research and I basically took the entire Fortune 500 company list and I put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And here I like basically grouped them by what industry they were in. And then once I took out the ones that I knew I wasn't interested in, then I applied to like all 200 of the companies that were left, which I was interested in. And this way, if you build yourself a spreadsheet like this, you can track your applications. And, recruiting is tough, right? Like during this summer and during this year of 2017, where I spoke with like 50 professionals during that year and applied to over 200 companies, I still only ended up with like 10 interviews. And then like, I think 5 said yes. And then ultimately 2 gave me offers. So recruiting is tough when you're applying to these big companies, right? And at this point, I had like no knowledge about networking. I didn't really have a network. I was just sending out these applications, just filling them in and clicking like the submit button. So in order to not like lose track of that, you really want to build a spreadsheet showing, okay, these are the companies I applied to. This is my interest level in what the job is offering or what the role is offering, when they were posted and the response. And then similarly to that, you want to build yourself a networking sheet where you're keeping track of the different people you talk to. So the company, the name, what their role is, their email, have they responded back to you? Have you emailed them? And then how did the info chat go? So you really want to track both of these things to make sure that you're setting, you're not forgetting about any of these applications. You're not forgetting about any of these people that, you're networking with. And then when it comes to the cold emails that you can reach out with, I use something like this, which is a subject line of Michigan student, BBA student, inquiring about the role. Hi, I'm Steven. I'm finishing this. This is like my little spiel at the beginning. You might recall that we met at an event over some topic. And then if you didn't, and it's just going across LinkedIn, you can say, I came across you on LinkedIn and noticed this is where you worked, right? You tell them why you're writing. For me, I really admire their career track and I'd love to learn more about what they do. And then this paragraph is usually where you use this paragraph to set up a phone call. And you want to be the flexible one because you're the student, they're the professional, they're obviously more busy, and you want to show them that flexibility up front. And then the last part is, if you'd like to review my background, I've attached my resume. And then in addition, if there's anything I can do, please let me know, and thank you for your time. So I use this for emailing people that I haven't met. I use this for LinkedIn messaging people that I haven't met. And I think for me, this is a great template. There's another template that I've seen that I just took an image of, and I thought this was really a good template as well. So thanks for connecting on LinkedIn. I appreciate connecting with you. As mentioned in my note, I saw that you're recruiting for these different roles. Here's why I believe I would be a good fit. And then would you have a few minutes to chat? You really want to get to the talking phase because that talking phase essentially sets you up for success if it goes well. If it doesn't go well, that's not good. Just use that as a learning opportunity and move on. But if it does go well, that talking phase can really set you up for success in whoever you're talking to, pushing you forward or pushing your application forward into the hiring manager or the hiring team to really give you that interview. So this whole phase about networking and application is really just pushing you to the interview phase. So I basically covered a lot of the materials that I used during networking execution, but I'll just walk through the structure very briefly again. So the first step, what I do is I identify the target roles and companies that I really want to focus on and apply for. And then that focus is increased as you gain experience. So let's say my first year starting out, I don't know where I want to work, and that's okay. Just apply to a lot of different companies that you may be interested in. But as you start to get more experience, as you start to get through classes, as you start to learn more about the corporate world, you're going to have a better understanding of what you're interested in and where you want to focus your goals, right? And so at this point, just really know, hopefully, a better understanding of what you want to do, because you never want to say, I don't know what I want to do in these types of instances. So the second part, seek context. So when you're recruiting and networking, I usually aim for one campus recruiter plus 2 to 3 contacts on the team that I want to work for or in the program that I want to work for. And then, like before, you can use LinkedIn, friends, alumni, and student organizations. And then the informational interview, where I walk through sort of sending that initial email. So arrange the meeting, and then you want to prepare specific and relevant questions. This is something I'll walk through right now. So when you're first researching a company, what I like to do is build out these little one-page profiles for myself. And when I was applying through those 200 companies, I basically built one for like all the companies that I was like highly interested in. So I knew whoever I talked to at that company, I was extremely like knowledgeable and had really good conversation points to talk about. So this is when I was applying to Facebook. So I wrote down their mission statement, their company operations, which is from their 10K, their headquarters, location, CEO, their main products, the future of technology services industry. So at the time, I wanted to be able to add to that conversation piece. So these are just things that are relevant to the industry that you're applying for, just from some articles that you can look up. Recent events that you can talk about, and then the role, duties, and characteristics are basically copied from the job description or application that you're applying for. So having all this in front of you before you interview, before you talk to someone from that company is really helpful, because this is something that you can refer back to all as really good conversation points to talk about during those 30 minutes. And then the second point, which is interview questions. These interview questions, no matter if it's an informational interview, coffee chat, or during the real interview itself, these are all very good questions that I've written over the years for myself to really ask about the different companies and roles that I was interviewing for. So a lot of the times I asked the interviewer about themselves. I asked them about the responsibilities, what kind of professional growth and collaboration their team offers, what kind of location and why they chose that location. And then I talk about recent events and sort of when I can expect to hear back. Most likely, you're not going to be able to get through this whole page. You might get through like 2 to 3 questions, and that's okay. But this bank is literally here so that even now in a virtual setting, it's very helpful to just pull up on a monitor when you're talking to the interviewer. And when they ask you, hey, do you have any questions for me? You know, you actually have legitimate thought out questions. And then the best thing after the interviews is obviously to express gratitude and follow up. Like I would say 90% of people don't follow up, and that's a huge mistake. Make sure you always follow up within like 24 to 48 hours, because that really shows not only gratitude, but it shows that like you care about the person, right? And we're all human. We all want to feel good about ourselves, and that, you know, the recruiter or whoever you're talking to on the professional side is no different. So always make sure to follow up, and that really keeps the relationship going. So the huge tips here is to start early and really consistently network throughout your college career, and even after you graduate. Like even now where I'm working, I try to talk to at least one person a week just to learn about what the company does and what everyone does. And like tying the threads together of like, okay, how does this company really run, right? You always want to know where you're working at, like how does it operate at a high level. You want to make sure that you're seeking advice and building a relationship through a curiosity perspective and not transactional. Definitely always aim for quality over quantity. If you and someone don't vibe, that's completely okay. Not everyone vibes. You can have other people to then talk to. And if a relationship like doesn't go the way you want it to, or you guys don't click, like that's completely okay. It happens. and then track all the contact details through the spreadsheet. So now to the final part, which is the interview. So the focus here is to really establish rapport with the interviewer through mutual respect and competence and warmth. So what they're really looking for is two big things, is that one, are you competent enough and can you do the job? And two, are you someone that like they can easily work with? You know, you're not someone that is like argumentative or like gets mad about like little things, right? So those are the two big things. Can you do the job, and are they going to like you as a person while they're working with you, even if you can do the job? So most interviews, I would say 95% of interviews follow the structure of behavioral questions, technical questions, and company specific questions, right? And so those can be things which I've listed in number 3, such as tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work at X company, right? Those would be things such as behavioral questions. It can also include resume deep dive, which is basically taking your resume and asking you about what a bullet means. Like, for example, tell me about what you did at X company with this bullet. And you're going to have to explain that. And the whole goal of that is to learn about your thought process, learn about how you impacted and added value to your team. But most importantly, it's to really showcase how you think about things and how you learn, and that you are not lying on your resume, because it's really easy to tell through the interview process if you're lying, because you're not going to have a lot of specific details about that bullet point. Whereas the more specific details and the better you can explain it, the better it is for the interviewer to understand how you really did in that project. And these 5 topics, teamwork, conflict, disagreement, persuasion, and obstacles, I would write those 5 topics down. I tell people all the time, those 5 topics cover at least like 95% of all behavioral interviews. So teamwork is like, tell me about a time you've collaborated with others. Conflict is, tell me about a time you've had a disagreement or you've conflicted with your manager and how you resolve that issue. Persuasion is, tell me about a time you've influenced others to help drive a project along. And then hardships and obstacles is, tell me about a time where you failed and how you've grown from that. Technical question would be things such as finance related or whatever your discipline or major is. So for me, since I'm finance, this question that I got at Facebook was, tell me about how you plan to forecast newsfeed ad revenue in the next quarter, right? So they would want to see how you think about the financial aspects of it, the qualitative aspects of that decision, and your thought process to that question. And then company specific questions can be things such as this 4th bullet right here, which is, tell me about your favorite product at Microsoft. And so those 3 questions, behavioral, technical, and company specific, are very likely to appear in like every interview that you're, like I would say 90% plus of interviews that you're going to have. Some rounds, let's say the first round, may not have technical questions, but throughout the whole process, if you have multiple rounds, you're definitely going to want to prepare for all 3 of those types. Number 2, the HCT structure and stories is how I like to build my behavioral questions, or just any behavioral, and honestly all questions in general besides the technical, right? So you want to either start with themes or you want to build stories around those themes. So when I say themes, I mean those 5 themes that I mentioned in the 3rd section. So teamwork, conflict, disagreement, persuasion, and obstacles. You want to build a story around all 5 of those themes, so that when you at the interview, let's say they ask you a question regarding a theme, perfect. You've got the exact response you're going to give. But if they ask you a question that's a little different, you can pull your response from a different theme and spin it so that it can answer the question tied to the theme that they were just asking you about. So you definitely want to have those stories written beforehand, and maybe not memorize them fully, but definitely memorize the main points that you want to talk about so that during the interview, you're not forgetting the important parts. I like to build it in a sort of HCT format, which is headline, the context, action, result, which is similar to the resume bullet, and then the most important part is the takeaway. So headline, the thesis of the story is sort of like, okay, I'm just going to reword what the question was given to me. And so if they say, tell me about a time you did X, I'm going to be like, okay, this is a time where I, influenced others, right? Then I give the context, action, result in a 130 to 2 minute spiel, similar to the resume, but like a very long version of a spoken out version of that. And then the final part you want to give is the takeaway, because a lot of, I would say 90% of people don't do this. And the takeaway is extremely important because you're showing the interviewer that not only are you competent and you're a good person to work with, but you're also showing them you're coachable and you're very feedback oriented. So you're willing to learn, you're willing to make mistakes, but you're also willing to learn from those mistakes and be very growth mindset and feedback driven. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the presentation on how to navigate the recruiting lifecycle and get an internship. And the big takeaways here is to really set goals and invest the appropriate amount of time to really improve your career search process. This is something that takes years to really get down. Like that first year, I had no idea what I was doing, but I would say by like the second or third summer, I had like a much stronger understanding what I was going to do. And also your resume builds over time, and also your interview questions and your skills build over time, right? So this is not something that you're going to really get down in 1 year. It takes about, I would say, at least 3 years to really hone in on and master. And then the other thing is to really be resilient. Like you're going to get rejected from a ton of companies. Like my first time doing it, if I, let's say, applied over to 200, I got rejected from like 190 of those straight up. So you gotta not be scared of that and just keep pushing through.